I'm Cheryl Chumley. This is Bold and Blunt, giving you a Christian conservative view of news, politics, culture, and events. Gol Kalev, thank you so much for being back on Bold and Blunt. So great to have you again.
My pleasure. Good to see you.
So where are you today, just to quickly brief?
I am in Jerusalem, Israel.
Okay. And how is the tone and tenor of the Israeli people today?
Well, we're getting by. The overall morale is high, as it's been all along. We're trying to continue our routine, but we have funerals every day. We bury our soldiers. We're going through the difficult economic repercussions that the war leads to and the social repercussions, but we're getting through, and we're staying faithful.
And the political pressures are mounting, and I wanted to discuss specifically the latest on the talk about a two-state solution. Joe Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu, after weeks, finally had a phone conversation. Joe Biden came out of that phone conversation and said that Bibi may agree to a two-state solution, but that's not the case, is it?
No, of course not. Israelis will do not agree to a two-state solution. I mean, the polling is roughly 80% of the Israeli Jewish population reject it, and that's while there is a very aggressive PR campaign coming from elements in the United States to convince us otherwise. We've been through this movie before. As I said, we've done, went to Oslo, we went to the Gaza disengagement. We're not committing suicide again. The idea of a two-state solution, to talk about it now is so ridiculous. I mean, to begin with, it was really more of a theoretical template and a slogan than a practical solution. The Palestinians don't want it. The Israelis don't want it. So now after the Gaza war, not only that we've seen what could happen had there been a state of Palestine in Gaza, but the whole idea is dead because people in Biden's own party called Gaza an occupation. And this is after we withdrew. There's not a single soldier, there's not a single settler in Gaza. So if Gaza is an occupation, then certainly the state of Palestine will be under occupation, because Biden himself says it's going to be demilitarized. Israel will control the airspace. Israel will have what they call a siege. We will control, in the way that the administration and anybody, any possibly the UN and others envision the two-state solution. It is in such conditions that the other side in Europe, not the Palestinians, but people in the UN, people in the media, will view it under occupation, and then will justify attacks from the state of Palestine against us. So, we can go on and on. We've spoke about it, but the two-state solution is dead. Everybody understands that. But it's interesting that they're dusting it up and bringing it up.
So walk people through, because I don't think people in America understand some people in America, let's just say the pro-Palestinian protesters in the streets definitely do not understand this concept. Explain then that what Israel would see in terms of a future for the Palestinian people, for those living in Gaza right now. What would be the ideal for the Israeli people?
Well, there's different views about the day after, and there's different templates. And, I think maybe if we try to have this conversation between Biden and Netanyahu in the positive, is that they might even be saying the same thing. Meaning, Israel would like the Palestinians to control their own lives, but not to control the military presence in Gaza, not to have any sort of sovereign-like elements that can destabilize Israel and threaten Israel, not to control, what has they've done now, not to have school system in which generations after generations of Palestinians are educated to hate the Jews, to murder Jews, that this is their raison d'etre. So, this is, we've tried this in Oslo and it failed. This is why we're here. I mean, because of the Oslo Accords, we had 1,000 Israeli dead right after, the years after in the Intifada, but it created the conflict industry. It created this whole mess that we're in now. And then in 2005, we got out of Gaza, and that's why we have this Gaza war. Hamas attacked us from Gaza. So, the Israelis, for us, it is, what should be obvious to anybody, that we will control the security, the military situation in Gaza and in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria, because that is essential to our survival and security, and every military expert agree about that. Now, you can say one day in the future, you would have an entity that will be like similar to the United States, that will control the West Bank and Gaza. and the people in Gaza and the people in the Palestinian territories would all love Israel. It's possible. It's possible it would happen, in a few decades or centuries. But the population has been so indoctrinated, not just by the Palestinians, but also by the Europeans and by the UN, by Al Jazeera, by the NGOs funded by European taxpayers, that you cannot just, Theodor Herzl, when he thought about the Jewish state, he said, you cannot just put an ad in the paper and say to the Europeans, you hated Jews for 2,000 years, now the Jews are free and stop hating them. It doesn't work. So you cannot just put an ad in the paper and tell the Palestinians, everything you know about Israel is over and forget about it and now start loving Israel. It's completely not practical. So we have, whatever the situation is, and we have to control the security situation in Gaza and in the West Bank, and the credible Palestinian body eventually will hopefully control the civil administration.
I'm sure you discuss this frequently because this seems the looming question. So Israel is adamant that the objective of this war is to root out Hamas and root out the terrorists, and a two-state solution is off the table. Joe Biden, the West in general, many in the global governments and so forth are continuing to press for a two-state solution. So the conflict is clear. Who gives and what happens in Israel? Where are talks leading that this is going to lead? What are people saying that this is going to lead to?
Yeah, this is exactly what we spoke 2 weeks ago when you mentioned my article in the Jerusalem Post that says that we should expect an unprecedented ideological assault on Israel coming from the West. And part of it is because this two-state solution paganic idol. It is, years ago, I went to an event here in Jerusalem with people in the UN, from the UN and the EU, where somebody says that two-state solution was just a fable. It was a delusion. And they were talking about that for weeks. It's as if, somebody called it political blasphemy. This is what they believe in. So the fact that it's gone has repercussion, and we're seeing it. But it's not just like a emotional thing. I mean, there are reasons. Some argue. I'm not going to say that that's the reason, but some think that the Biden administration is pushing this because they want to have some sort of an achievement before the election, some sort of a peace deal, even if it lasts for like a minute, and then after that we have a bunch of other October 7th. A two-state solution, a pathway to power. They want the Saudis and others to come in, to say, okay, we're having a credible path towards a Palestinian state, and here we brought peace, and here's the election. So some people think that this is what this is all about. I'm not saying it is, but some people think that this is all about the elections. But either way, Cheryl, we are not dying in Gaza for the state of Palestine that got concocted in somebody's imaginary mind, and we're certainly not dying for anybody's elections aspirations.
So let's just jump to a different topic really quickly, because I know we only have a couple minutes left, but there are something like 136, 138 hostages still in the hands of Hamas right now. I don't know how many of them women, but I'm curious, where are the women's groups on speaking out against the atrocities? The more I hear about the atrocities that occurred to women taken by Hamas, the more despairing the situation becomes. Where are the women's rights groups?
Oh yeah, where are they? They're busy bashing Israel. What they've done all along, especially ones associated with the UN and European funded countries, or funded by the European countries. I tell you where the issue of women's rights is just look at Israel. Look at how Israel advances women's rights just over the last few weeks, because who are the soldiers who are fighting, against Hamas? Many of them are women. I mean, the heroic stories we heard on October 7th of women, soldiers coming in and heroically rescuing hostages. Many of them, or some of those women soldiers, sadly were killed. We're seeing the essence of women's rights and women liberation, if you will, here in Israel. But the women's rights organization is something else. They have their own agenda. And Cheryl, maybe we should ask a broader question. Where are the human rights organization in general? Because, there are, over 1 million Palestinian refugees on the border with Egypt who want to get out. They want to get out. I'm not saying they should get out, but they say they want to get out. And Egypt doesn't let them in. Now, it's a little bit, silly to say Egypt doesn't let them in, because the United States has a lot of leverage over Egypt, especially since they're in such economic perils. The United States, for whatever reason, is choosing to keep them in there because they could have got them out. They could have had some program, to have them pass through Egypt and go to other countries. But there's a decision that by the United States to keep, to create this humanitarian crisis, basically. And we know that because I think we spoke 2 weeks ago and you asked me about Blinken coming to Israel, and his priority was to get assurances from Netanyahu that he will stop voluntary immigrations of Palestinians out of Gaza. I mean, that is ludicrous, and you cannot think of something that's more against human rights. Because when humans are at war, many humans want to flee. Some don't, but many humans at war want to flee. That's why it's so many refugees in Iraq, in Syria, in Afghanistan. And that's why you have refugees in Israel, Jewish refugees in the north that wanted to flee. And as we spoke 2 weeks ago, I was by a hotel that hosted them in Jerusalem. Refugees from the south wanted to flee. The only refugees that for some reason the United States and the West don't let out is the refugees in Gaza. And talk about women's rights. Who knows what's happening in those camps on the border with Egypt? Hamas is not just against Israel. It has a lot of accounts to settle with a lot of people. So, this is mind-boggling, and this is a violation of human rights. But for some reason, they want the Palestinians there. And maybe we can connect the beginning of our talk to this, because why? You can wonder, why does the United States and the West insist on having those Palestinian refugees in? And maybe it is because of their imaginary two-state solution. Because to have a two-state solution, you need a lot of people. You need a lot of Palestinians. If Palestinians leave, the whole premise of this two-state solution, that there's going to be, more Palestinians than Jews between the river and the sea, and all other premises are going to be gone. So I'm not saying that that's what's happening, but, some people can add 1 + 1, this bizarre two-state solution talk, and then this bizarre forcing Palestinians against their will to stay in Gaza as refugees in horrific conditions, risking their lives every night. Who knows how many women gets raped there every night? Are they keeping them there because they want to complete their fantasy about a two-state solution? I don't know. But there's a lot of questions and sadly not a lot of answers. And I think, Cheryl, you're Washington Times, so maybe you need to ask this for some of your friends in Washington.
I'm sure it all points back to politics, right? Politics by bureaucrats and those running for re-election. Gol, there's an issue that I really wanted to get into a discussion with you about the Christian community in Israel, and maybe that's something that we could talk about next week if you have the time. But look, I want to thank you for coming on Bold and Blunt once again. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure. Good to see you.